All right, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76. First of all, please like the stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. I think the last time, this is my third live stream this weekend. So, yeah, it's my third live stream this weekend. So, I think yesterday when I checked, I was at on this channel, I was at what 400, no 685. So I'm 15 away from 700. So if you're new to the channel, please help push me up to 700. So that's the next landmark or the next checkpoint or milestone, whichever one you want to use. So today we're going to switch it up a little bit. Yesterday I had Roger from the Roger Report on, and we had an interesting discussion about the dating and the mating space, and we talked about loyalty, good company, and good character, and those kinds of things. So if you want to watch that, you can. That's in my library of videos now. So this one's going to be more about business, and I like to, when I split my channels off into my other three, because I have three channels, and those are all in the description box below in case you want to, see any of those other topics. As you know, I'm a scientist, so I have a science background. So I have a channel just dealing with science and technology. I also, have an interest in sports. I went to Michigan. And I have a sports channel, and I have an entertainment and media channel as well, where I talk about movies and, the Avengers and Star Wars and those kinds of things. That one's a bit of a pet project, but those are my three other channels. But on this channel, what I decided to do was to make it about general topics. So I talk about numerous things here. One of them is what I call creating ecosystems of success. I got this from a mentor. Education is also a main focus over here. In everything I talk about, there's usually some personal story involved. So I don't like to talk about what I haven't lived. In some instances, it's a thought of the day. I have something that I'm going to upload tomorrow about, I've had some thoughts about the 2020 election. So that's going to go up in the morning. But a topic that's near and dear to my heart is financial literacy / money. And part of my personal story is that even though I have a PhD in a hard science, there was a lot to learn about money and finance and financial literacy, and business falls under this umbrella. And I was actually just on a call with my mentor and his son this morning about business, something business related. I actually earlier, probably toward the end of last year, I started the Big Words LLC. So in a very small way, I've entered the business arena myself. Don't ask me for a consultation at this point. I'm learning on the fly, and I have a mentor helping me and guiding me. So, but I have entered this realm. Hopefully, this will go on for the duration of my life. But it's something that I've launched off to. So there's a Big Words LLC. My blogging platform operates under that, as do my YouTube channels. So what we're going to talk about today, I was approached a little while ago by a gentleman named Ray Alexander, and he wanted to talk about the connection between education, entrepreneurship, and wealth building. And I used, for the thumbnail, I read over the materials that he shared with me earlier. And for the thumbnail is this picture of Robert F. Smith. And if you don't know who Robert F. Smith is, you've been pretty much living under a rock. So a couple of years ago, he made a generous gift to the graduating class of Morehouse College. And he is a billionaire, and he is the owner and the founder of Vista Equity Partners. And the significance, I mean, it was a very, very generous gift that he gave those Morehouse men. But one of the major significances of Mr. Smith is that he is a chemical engineer by training. So he started a white collar career as a chemical engineer. And then at some point, he made the transition from being a chemical engineer in companies like Goodyear tire and rubber, air products and chemicals, and Kraft General Foods. So he made the jump from being an employee to becoming a billionaire, business owner and investor. That resonated with me when I was in graduate school. When I first started caring about this stuff, I by chance picked up a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that made me start to think about financial literacy and money. And starting a business of some sort was kind of far off for me at that time, because all I had was my science training. But this started getting me thinking about investing in real estate and becoming financially independent, and making money for myself and maybe leaving the job. So a lot of us have thought about this, and a lot of us have started reading about this. Some people have started taking action. Some people are just reading about it. I'm going to make a few more points before I bring Ray up so he can talk to us about his articles and why he was interested in this topic. Going back to Mr. Smith, and there are others like him. And I think in his email, Ray talked also about Bob Johnson, who was I believe the founder and the owner of BET. But Robert F. Smith, while he's the thumbnail and the avatar for this, he's not the only one. There are other individuals out there who have started white collar careers and gotten that college training and made that jump to entrepreneurship. But I'm gonna, for my own blogging platform, I realized that I wrote something that applies to this. I have a background. I have a general biology degree, and I have a PhD in pharmacology. And I wrote this piece on my blogging platform a couple of years ago, and it's about the transferable skills. So if you don't know what transferable skills are, those are, you might have gotten your training in one discipline, but you, in the process of getting that training, you may have learned things that can transfer into other sectors or into other ventures. So, for example, when you get science training, and I read through the materials Ray sent, and many white collar professionals who become entrepreneurs, many of them have biology training. So I would fall under that category. When you have science training, you learn, for example, critical thinking / problem solving skills. You learn the ability to multitask, to organize and to coordinate multiple projects at one time. You learn the ability to write clearly. You learn the ability to speak and present clearly. You learn to work on teams, and you learn the ability to adapt and understand new systems. So I do that in my 9 to 5, but I've also done that in my business endeavors as well, starting my blogging platform, and even now coming over here to YouTube. I've used all those things for my science training to do all of this. 2 more points. A major focus of this channel right now is critical thinking, and actually for over on my science channel as well. And you learn this when you train in science, to think critically, not about your emotions, but critically about the data and what the numbers tell you. And so this is a major bedrock of this channel now. Thinking critically, not necessarily going with the herd, but thinking on your own and thinking creatively and thinking of your own ideas and trying to piece together what things mean from your own logic. And so One of the things I wanted to say is that I think today's discussion, we're going to approach this from the vantage point of individuals who have had white collar training, but we're not, in approaching it this way, we're not disregarding or looking down on the blue collar brothers, because I know that, having been in these YouTube streets for a while, I know that division can exist sometimes, and there sometimes we do segregate, especially in our community, along class lines. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there that getting white collar training and getting a college degree is not the only way to go. And it's not the only way to start a business, because there are blue collar individuals who are living prosperously, and there are blue collar individuals who have started businesses of their own. So at some point, I might even do a collaboration with someone from one of the blue collar sectors to talk about what they're doing and how they've built businesses. And the last thing, and even in today's digital world, there are people who are getting wealthy and living well even without getting a white collar career and a college degree. And a college degree today, especially now more than ever, individuals have to be savvy, and they have to think it out very well what they're going to get their college degree in and what they're going to train in. And individuals have to think about what they're going to do with that degree on the back end, especially if they're going to have to borrow the money to get that degree. Give me one more minute, Ray, and I'll bring you up. Why does all of this matter? I shot this video on Dr. Claude Anderson on my channel about 2 months. Well, no, it was about 4 months ago, because that was August. But Dr. Claude Anderson is typically front and center in the reparations discussion. I wrote a blog post at the beginning of this year on Dr. Claude Anderson's vision and Dr. Martin Luther King's vision for the burning house. I'll probably leave that in the description box below. But the bottom line is that Dr. Claude Anderson has been very outspoken about the fact that we don't have a lot of Black businesses. And that has a lot to do with where our community sits in this country and how things are in this country. And he's very, very outspoken about the fact that it's not just voting. Voting by itself won't get you what you want, but you have to have the economics to put behind that voting as well, to influence the politicians and to push the policies through that you want pushed out. So there's a lot about this, about what we're going to talk about, that's very, very important. So I think with that, I'm done. I believe Ray has written a couple things and he wants to talk to us about that. So I am going to bring him up and hand the ball off.
Hello, Dr. Dunbar. Thank you for allowing me to come on today. That was a very good introduction and disclaimer about what we're attempting to do. And I do appreciate you for having this discussion. I think it's very needed. And also to discuss the importance of Dr. Claude Anderson and Powernomics on that. One of the things that I do appreciate the fact that you came out with this discussion as well as your blog, and where you talked about the importance of education. And as you said, there's going to be a variety of ways that Black Americans can develop wealth in the U.S. And one of those avenues is through education in the white collar world. And if you just comment, if you're going to be commenting, and Robert Smith did show that, as you said, as well as Robert Johnson of Black Entertainment Television, who went to the University of Illinois, as well as got his graduate degree at Princeton. And that degree at Princeton allowed him to get into some connections when he went to work in Washington, D.C., where he was hired by the National Cable and Television Association. And that's how he found out about the need for Black cable TV, and that there was no one doing it. And he was a pioneer in getting that started with his wife, and he got investments from his wife's father, who was one of the first Black neurosurgeons out of Chicago. And also he got an Ivy Leaguer, John Malone, at another cable company to invest 500,000 to really get that seed capital solidified to develop black entertainment television. So that's one thing on that, and I appreciate you for going over that. One of the things that I also want to talk about when the article that we kind of put together called Billionaire Robert F. Smith illustrates the importance of education and entrepreneurship for Black men. We want to encourage our brothers, the younger, especially the millennial brothers, that education is a good way to get information about business. If you don't have a background, if you don't have family members or connections, and that will probably be the majority of our brothers and sisters. We don't come from wealthy backgrounds. We don't come from networks on how to do entrepreneuring. We don't have an uncle or cousin that can loan us $100,000 to do very much of anything. So going into these institutions, and I don't advocate borrowing a lot, but there are local community colleges, there are local and regional state supported schools that are very affordable where you can work and go part-time and get the information you need. But as we talked about in the article, after completing a degree, you can work for a company, find out what's going on in that company, find out some information on that, gain business experience, save money, learn how to acquire business capital for a startup, because there are a lot of ways that people you might have, if you've got a good concept, you've got a good training in it, you've got a good background, there are angel investors that will be interested in you, but you've got to present that information the way they need that. And that's why I did want to say that. But you really went well over Robert F. Smith. But one of the points that I talked about in the article, is education is key to developing personal human capital. And we talk about human capital, those are the skills that you have, the knowledge and the information and what you bring to the table to either start a business, to work for someone else. It's just a very thing. And that's where education is so key, from the primary school to the secondary school, and then as we call tertiary education, college, beyond high school. Those are good things today.
Hey, Ray,
go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? Just a quick question. You can be as brief as you want.
Okay.
You can be as in-depth as you want. Can you talk just a little bit about your background and how you got interested in this topic?
Okay. My background, as I said, I work in healthcare finance. I have a bachelor's degree from a Big 12 conference university, as well as 2 graduate degrees from a different Big 12 conference university. I've gotten to this because I've been a prolific reader. I've always, read a lot when I've grown up. Even as an adult, I still keep a library card. So even when COVID is over, I'll, kind of hang out there once a month to see what's happening new. But I think that education for education's sake and education for personal development is very, very important, especially for our community. And so those are some of the things about me. I'm a person of faith. I grew up in a Christian church. I am still a Christian. I believe in family and in marriage and the Christian traditions that we have in the Black Christian church. And I just wanted to add this particular side of the commentary on that. Did that kind of give a little bit more in depth of a little more about me for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to show the audience something before we move on, because you just touched upon this.
Okay.
In terms of reading for reading's sake. I don't know if you ever saw this book.
Okay.
I found out about this book at the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference about 5 years ago. This is Living Debt Free by a woman named Georgette Miller Esquire, who's West Indian. She's a lawyer, and she talks about, living debt free, those kinds of things, and legal ways to manage your credit, and in some instances get you out from under your debt. But in this book, and then it's a very, very short book, I recommend anyone to read it. She does talk about how she talks about the advantages of having your parents or your grandparents or someone in your family save for your college education, and then the disadvantage of when you have to basically do it yourself, which a lot of us have to do but it's important based upon what we're talking about and what you just mentioned. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. And I did write that down because I hadn't heard of that particular book, but I definitely want to get access to that because, as I said, education for the sake of education and going to college. There was a part of the article that we added that came from Forbes magazine. And when we talk about the Forbes 400, the richest individuals in the U.S., the fact of the matter is 84% of the richest 400 Americans hold a bachelor's degree or higher. And that's compared to 33% of American adults. And so that should also show the importance. And they tend to hire people who are well educated to run their businesses and establish them as partners. And the second component of that is that 40% of the Forbes 400 had graduate degrees or higher. And it wasn't surprising that the most popular graduate degree was the MBA. So as you said, there's a STEM major. Robert Smith went to Cornell, got a chemical engineering degree, worked in industry first. Then he went to Columbia University School of Business to get his Master's of Business Administration degree. That's the same school that Warren Buffett attended to get his the top investor in this era. He went to Columbia University to get his MBA, and it's probably Robert Smith knew that going to Cornell that would be a good place if you want to understand investment banking, equity, and all of those types of things. And so these are some ways that now everybody doesn't have to go that way, but if you live in a city where they have a good community college, they usually have courses on how to start a business, how to put a business plan together, how to access capital. Those are good ways to go through those types of programs. And also, a lot of cities are putting together what we call business incubators, where they talk about what businesses are in demand, what's coming up on the horizon. And that's why when we talked about Robert Johnson and BET, had he not worked for the National Cable Television Association Lobbyist Group, he would not, or the American Cable Lobbyist Group, he would not have known that they were looking for a black cable network because they were trying to sell this concept to these cities that had predominantly black population, cities like Cleveland, cities like Detroit, even Washington, D.C. So when he got that concept, he was in the circles where other people were putting business plans together for their cable. And he said, well, could I see this business plan? He took that to his wife and she redid it for black entertainment television. So he had a really smart partner who actually is an artist, has a Master of Fine Arts from the University of Illinois, his ex-wife, Sheila Johnson. So he kind of married someone. Let me get back. I'm talking about Robert Johnson of BET and Sheila Johnson of his wife at that time. So those are a lot of things that come together. And what we're trying to do is just encourage these young brothers to find whatever tools that they can to be successful, because it's tough out here. And it looks like things will be tougher as we advanced in the digital economy, as there are more people coming in, kind of fighting for resources. And education is one thing that we have to do to get get it together as black men, as black families. I did want to talk. Go ahead. You have a question for me?
Yeah. Before we go on, I made a note here that we just finished talking about Bob Johnson and his wife Sheila Johnson.
Yes.
Before we go on, for those unfamiliar with the Forbes, you said the Forbes 400?
The Forbes 400. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what that is? Because we see these things, all the time, and a lot of people don't stop and think about what that means. The other thing is, if anyone wants to donate to the channel, my Cash App is below this video. If you want to put in $1 or whatever, you can do that. But a lot of people, don't understand what that means when they see that. Kind of like when the U.S. News and World Report rates universities and institutions. Can you talk a little bit about what the Forbes 400 is?
Yes, I'd be glad to do that. The Forbes 400 is an annual list of the wealthiest Americans by net worth. And that shows that, people like Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of the people who own professional sports teams, they're in there. You got the Hiltons in there. You got people like a lot of the New York investment banking firms are in there. But it's the wealthiest Americans, 400 Americans, and they basically own a lot of the institutions, like the Walmart family. They're in it, and they own Walmart is really the heavy hitter now. And so that's basically what that is. And they started ranking people annually, and I think they have about two or three Black Americans. I know Oprah Winfrey is in there. Rob Johnson may be close still there because after he got divorced, that did split as well. But there's the brother of Worldwide Technology, which is the largest Black enterprise right now. And so that's basically what that is. Did that kind of give some clarity about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think this is a good point to acknowledge an important vocabulary word going forward, and that's a net worth. A lot of people don't understand what that is and why a net worth is important. And just briefly, I'll say this, Ray. If you want to add on, you can add on.
Okay.
That's the difference between what you own versus what you owe. So your total assets minus your debts. And that's very, very different than your yearly salary. And there are a lot of people who don't understand what that is and why that's important. And that affects your level of wealth. And since we're talking about business, I believe when you go for business loans and apply for business credit, which is a different topic, they want to see how you're doing.
Right.
When you go to apply for a home loan, they want to see how you're doing, and then what they're looking at is your net worth. Ray, just give me 1 second here because I actually wrote and then I promise I'll pass it quickly back to you.
Okay, great.
I wrote this on my blogging platform. This is just important for people to see this. Reading for reading's sake. I like that, Ray.
Thank you.
So I'm going to drop this link in the chat. If you don't know what a net worth is, it's a very, very important concept that a lot of people just don't understand. It's different from your salary. Okay. So and likewise, a person can have a high salary and they can have a low net worth. That's important to understand as well. So go ahead, Ray.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for pointing that out. I'm glad. And yeah, and as you say, as you should show, feel free to add on that. And this is all we're trying to do, is to encourage people to be aware of what's happening out there, because these institutions, and they're powerhouse institutions. They're vital to the society. And for us to not access some of them, even at the local level, it's not a good move. I mean, we have, as you said, Robert Smith paid off $40 million in the debt, 4-year debt for the whole class, what is the class of 2018, to Morehouse College. That relieved him of a lot. And he had to be in position to do that. And he's number 163 on the Forbes 400 on that. He also gave something like $20 million to toward the establishment of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, that museum that we put in, that was put in in the federal government. I think it's a part of the Smithsonian, and that is showing a lot of our history, how we came here, the things that we've overcome. So he was a part of that, and you have to be in position to do those things today. I did want to go ahead and go over a point as well in the article. And this is these are from economists from the St. Louis Federal Reserve Center for Housing and Financial Stability. They're saying that there is a correlation, a strong link between wealth, income, and education. And so what they found out, the likelihood of a family without a high school diploma having at least $1 million in wealth is about 1 in 110, compared to 1 in 20 for a high school graduate. But it goes to 1 to 4.6 for a college graduate, but it's 1 and 2.6 for families with a professional or graduate degree. So the more education you get, I think that's a part of getting your income and getting into the circles to understand how to do some things that you normally not. Maybe as a scientist, I'm not certain, but I do know other scientists. You kind of get in circles of people that are doing things that you probably wouldn't get in otherwise. I mean, if you're raising money for a foundation, and then some of the entrepreneurs are investing in something that's coming up, then you would want to be aware of the importance of investing on that. Or if they're saying that they're saving money for the long term, or if you're in certain circles where people are getting married at a certain stage of their lives and they are getting a home at a certain stage of their lives, all of those things are helping them to become wealthy, and that educational component is a good part of that. So the what I did want to comment on as well, there's a great deal of solid research that says that higher education is a good stepping stone for young entrepreneurs to increase their chances of business success. The better educated entrepreneurs have greater access to external capital, lower business failure rates, greater business sales, and employment growth, as well as more profitable ventures. So those are some of the things that we want to consider in that. And this is just to encourage people. And when they look at Robert Smith, when they look at Robert F. Johnson, and when they look at the chairman of Worldwide Technology, these were educated brothers who utilized that educational resource to put themselves in network that they never would have been in. And those are some of the things that I wanted to encourage us to do as well.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that the education is not just getting the piece of paper itself. And a lot of people put a lot of weight on that. I have my degree. I'm degree, and I got my piece of paper, but it's also about the networking. It's also being around the like-minded people. It's also about being in an incubator with like-minded people who are coming up with ideas and those kinds of things. But you also mentioned external capital. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? Because when I hear that, I think about bank loans, but bank loans aren't the only forms of external capital, are they?
No, they're not. Sometimes it's personal loans, like say, for instance, the $500,000. Well, the first 50,000 that was invested in BET was by Sheila Johnson's neurosurgeon father. So that kind of got them stabilized a little bit. But the major investment was that 500,000 that came from John Malone, who was an Ivy League grad as well. So when you look at a certain brother, they're saying, okay, he might not have known Robert Johnson real well, and Robert Johnson said he did know him real well, but he knew he had a master's in public affairs from Princeton University. He knew that he worked for the National Cable Television Association, and that those are some powerful things. If I don't know someone and they're starting something and they've shown me that they can do those types of things, then if I'm going to invest, even if 500,000 is not really, if I'm a billionaire, 500,000 is not a lot for me to use, but that 500,000 was a lot for Bob Johnson, then those things kind of give me a little bit of comfort, or saying, okay, this guy's smart enough to get through Princeton. Let me see what he can do with this black entertainment television thing. Okay, I got 500,000. It's not going to hurt me if it comes up. And actually, once that 500,000, once he sold, he took that public or sold that to Viacom. I think that turned out to be about 300 million for Bob Malone. So that was a sweet investment that he got, because he only owned about 20% of it, and he allowed Bob Johnson to own 80% of that. And the second one would be angel investors. Like when you see people on Shark Tank, although they're really hard on them, that's it. Those are angel investors. So you have to go through people. And that might be the small business administrator. You got to go to before someone, present your ideas, show a concept, show at least a small track record of success. And you learn that. A lot of these business schools, they show you how to do that. A lot of these programs actually show you how to present that information, how to do a business plan, how to do a presentation. And it sounds small, but it's very big. If you're an investor and you're investing in someone, you want to know that they can do those things. If you can articulate, if you have a written business plan, they say, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is how much you need. You've done this how many years? Okay, let me go ahead. I'll go ahead and write this over for 50,000, and then we'll be business partners for the next 3 years. And after you pay me back, hey, that's your business. You know, and we need that because we don't have uncles most of the time who have 50 grand to invest in us. We don't have an aunt or whatever, or parents. But those are the things, and we're competing with other people that have those resources. And I'm pretty sure when you got your PhD from the University of Michigan, I don't know, but I know when I went to grad school, I was surprised at the large number of people whose parents and grandparents had invested in them to get them there. Like some of us we're first generation college students, but you have people whose grandparents, like you said, had saved up for their grandchild to go to college. So they go to undergraduate degree, school debt free, and then they get a full fellowship to get their PhD. You know, so those are some of the things that are interesting. Did you observe that when you attended the University of Michigan PhD program? Did you come in contact with very many people like that?
I did not.
Okay.
I was in STEM,
Okay.
and yeah, my graduate advisor, my classmates, very few of which looked like me. But then again, we may not have talked about that.
Okay.
I had I had lab mates from Indiana and New England and Illinois, but we didn't talk about how they funded their undergraduate educations. In a STEM like the one I was in, our graduate degrees were funded by our advisors in the department, but we didn't talk about that. But I do know that there are families where the education is planned for so that the child has very little or less to pay back on the back end. And I'll say that your education, just by depending upon what it's in, I think that's an important thing. I'm gonna keep hammering home throughout this discussion and beyond. It matters what your education is in. The mentor I told you guys about earlier, he took an interest in me because he saw that I was a Black man with a degree in a hard science, and this. This may rub some people the wrong way, but when you're talking about PhDs, and I won't make these judgments myself, but not every PhD is the same. Not everyone is looked at the same. Not every PhD commands the same salary. And there are some PhDs who have backgrounds in some very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Imaginative topics. But I'm saying that to say that what your PhD and what your education is, it matters. It matters in the job market, but it also matters in terms of who's going to take a personal interest in you. And I know that my background facilitated the mentor that I have now who's teaching me about business. That's what got him interested in me and helping me grow my brand and just grow as a man. So that matters. Do you know anything about Reginald Lewis?
I do know about Reginald Lewis. Yeah. He started TLC Beatrice, which was he used to be a what you call mergers and acquisitions lawyer. I guess he was the first Black billionaire. Is that correct?
I believe so. I'm going to show it here, Ray.
Okay.
Hand it back to you. This is a controversial book. I think it was a good book. I'm from Buffalo's East Side, so I didn't know people like this growing up. I didn't know families like this growing up. But Reginald Lewis, I believe he's mentioned in here. And I think for Black History Month, I think we need to do, and just in general, we need to do a better job remembering people like Reginald Lewis alongside of our civil rights icons. We need to do a better job of remembering and celebrating people like Robert F. Smith and Bob Johnson for what they've contributed. But I'm saying this to say, reading for reading's sake there are a lot of things you can learn just by reading. And Reginald Lewis was mentioned in this, but yeah, I believe he was the first Black billionaire as well.
Right. And in addition, when we talk about Black Wall Street, and just kind of to digress slightly, when you talk about that era of the Black elite, another Black Wall Street was in Durham, North Carolina. And interestingly, there was a physician, a dentist, and a Black lawyer that pooled their resources together to start the Sloan family and a couple of other ones to start North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company. And so that's some old money that would be a part of that era as well that we really need to talk about. So there were several Black Wall Streets, but that company was around. I think it's still around. The building is still in there. The family did go into investment management now. One of the companies called NCM Capital Management. A second group would be REL Capital Management out of Chicago with John Rogers. And his father was a judge in family court district judge in Chicago. His mother was an attorney as well, and they gave him stock when he was a young boy to as they would give him gifts, but they would give him stock. So he got hip to that, and he went to Princeton University, and he started REL Capital Management. People like John H. Johnson of Ebony Magazine invested in him. Other Black entrepreneurs like the Bronner brothers of Atlanta with they do hair care businesses. And so now that's the largest Black retirement fund company right now, REL Capital Management. If you remember when President Obama was elected, the day afterwards, when he was in that room, and it said President-elect Obama, that was the building was REL Capital Management building. That's where he was. And the woman who was the social secretary, Desiree Rogers, that was John W. Rogers' ex-wife. So you got people, and she's also the best friend of the daughter of Ebony Magazine. So it's like you said, there are a lot of networks that we don't know about, but they've done a lot of good work. They've been doing a lot of behind the scenes work that we need to do, but we need to understand how can we get into those types of positions to help people that we're trying to help, man. And so but that's a good book. I did review that book a few years back. I'll have to look at it again, but that's an excellent book. And there's some books on the Black middle class that are out there there's a sister out of, she might be out of I think, and she has a Spanish last name, even though she's Black. I think her last name is Carrillo, and she does books on the Black middle class. And so those are some things that we can get into as well. And I'd like to see that coming up one of these days, one of your shows.
Okay. So let's see. So we left off on Bob Johnson and his wife, and getting not just getting the degree, but also the fact that when you go to a institution of higher learning, you're likely to by nature of the whole thing have a circle or have circles of people, and that's a major key to starting some sort of business or business endeavor. What were some other important points from the articles you sent and that you wrote that you wanted to communicate?
Okay, there's some other things on that. Say, for instance, when we talked about, there's a group, there was a survey about millionaires, and although a lot of people, it's actually called the National Study of Millionaires. And it shows that 88% of millionaires graduated from college compared to 33% of the general population. And they talked about the top 5 careers for millionaires being engineer, accountant, teacher, corporate manager, and attorney. And I'll go over the top 10 college degrees of it. And you'll be impressed with this because your degree is in there. It's number 2. The top 10 college degrees were, it's pretty impressive. So you got the top 10 college degrees of millionaires. Number 1 is accounting, which would be understandable. 2 is biology, probably because of so many people who are inventors in the sciences. 3 is business administration. 4, computer science. 5, economics. 6, education. 7, engineering. 8, finance. 9 political science, and 10 psychology. So those are some things that we kind of have to look at. If these people, these institutions, and they don't have to be the biggest. You don't have, if you could get into the Ivy League, but there's a lot of networks regionally as well. When you go to certain regional schools, like if you're in the Atlanta area and you go to, or in the Southeast and you go to Georgia Tech, Emory, or if you go to Duke or some of these places, they have regional networks. Some of them are national as well. But even if you can go to an HBCU like Alabama A&M, North Carolina A&T, Prairie View A&M, they have the largest cohorts of Black engineers and computer science majors coming out, and companies go there to recruit them specifically. You do have that same thing with the College of Science at places like Southern University, Tuskegee. But if you are going to some of these places that have these companies, when they're looking for engineers, and we're talking about, the major companies like Lockheed Martin, we're talking about Hewlett Packard. When they're looking for engineers, they're going straight to those campuses because they might be able to have 50, 75 graduates, maybe 100 graduates, and they might go to a predominantly white institution and maybe have three or five. Unfortunately, it is what it is. But so those are some things that we would want to talk about. But as you said, we talked about human capital. There's another section of the article that we talked about is that college educated entrepreneurs outperform everyone else. In the article, and this is by Forbes magazine as well, it says over 90% of American tech company founders hold a bachelor's degree, and those with MBAs are able to start and build their companies faster. And they go over Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, Princeton grad, Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And they say he's worth 177 billion. He graduated with highest honors at Princeton in 1986. And as you were just commenting on there, you were talking about beyond just getting the degree, networking with other people who are passionate about what they're doing. Educational programs that allow you to get your skills, but kind of give you a head start on what you're going to be doing later on in life. And then these companies put you through these really rigorous and very good management training programs that you're going to learn a lot of things that you would have to go on the long learning curve as an individual entrepreneur. There was some people sometimes make a joke about this, but if you've got an opportunity to work at McDonald's, even as a kid, there's a thing called McDonald's University. Their management training program is one of the top management training programs, period. If you want to be a franchise owner, if you want to really understand it, and you happen to come up through the School of Hard Knocks, these people are serious. So you can learn a lot of good things by working by established companies and doing those, finding that as a way for entrepreneurship. Did you have some additional questions or points that you wanted me to go over as well?
No, I think we've covered some very very important ones. Reading for reading's sake, I think I'm going to steal that one.
Okay.
Also, when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, and when I was reading through the materials you sent me, I was just thinking back to when I was setting off to go to college. When I went to college, I wasn't thinking anything about starting a business, or I was just thinking about getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people look at their degree, and when they go into college, they look at it just in terms of getting a job. But I think it's also important to start thinking about what you can do for yourself and how you can harness those skills to start to make your own money. And I think some of that's generational. I know certainly my father, and who I appreciate and who's been integral in my journey, his thing was job, job, job. So there wasn't a lot of encouragement to, well, how can you take those science skills and start something for yourself? So I think it's one of the things anyone listening to this, or if you know someone who's going into college and they're going that route, encourage them to start thinking about, building something for themselves, taking those skills, whether they're science skills, whether they're business skills, or something else. Start thinking about how to do something for yourself.
I agree with you. And a lot of these colleges have resources. I have a friend whose niece went to the University of Oklahoma College of Business, and they have a program called Entrepreneurship, and she majored in entrepreneurship and new venture management, or new venture development, and she got hired by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So she's already gotten that background, and now she's consulting with the major companies. So after she does her 5 year stint with Price Waterhouse, if she decides to stay, or she's already gotten, but she does have a background because her mother owns a State Farm agency, so she'll probably take that over later. But once you have that schools are doing it. That's a resource that you can have. That's a resource that you can utilize. And since they're pushing that, especially these state governments, they're trying to find avenues to help people be financially self-sufficient. And a job for many people is one way, but a business, and you have to go into it very seriously. Have you heard of a gentleman named Dr. George Frazier? He wrote the book about networking for Blacks.
Yep, I've heard of
Successful. Okay, success comes in our ways. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Boyce Watkins has had him on over on his channel a couple times. But yes,
Great. He's a great resource as well. He talks about he kind of jokes on it, but let me share what he says. He says that he wants us to start businesses, not businesses. You feel where I'm coming from? He wants us to be taking business serious as a profession. That you're going to learn about accounting, you're going to learn a little bit about marketing, you're going to learn about the technologies that put your business ahead of the curve. And so that's what he is that's where we are now, because we do want our businesses to succeed. The competition is fierce. We have people coming from other parts of the world with financial resources that we don't have. I live in a suburb that's 20% Asian, and it's a pretty upscale suburb. They don't come to the United States poor. They might sell some land and come over here with 250K, start a real estate business, catering to their own, start a home building business, catering to their own. So, and then they're degreed from their own country. So it's not like even if they come from a poor country, they're usually at the top of that poor country. So if you were a doctor in a, developing nation, and you came over here and we started, you're still kind of ahead of the curve. You understood how to become a doctor of medicine there. So you have to learn some nuances, but you're coming into the elite. So that's why I really encourage our brothers to get out there and explore, utilize these resources. If you can't go to the Ivy League, if you can't go to your big state school, go to that small community college and really take it seriously, get through it, take that next step, and you'll be surprised how many people will be proud of you to show. And you don't have to do it in 4 years. You can go part-time, do it 6 years, do it 8 years, pay as you go. You don't have to borrow money to go to school. If you happen to go to one of those expensive schools, I always advocate join ROTC. Let the feds pay for that. Let the military pay for that. And also, if you're going into medicine and things like that, let them pay for that. You leave school debt free. And I've mentored people that have done that. And you have more flexibility in what you can do. So those are some of the things I do advocate as well.
So I want to go back to something you said about the HBCUs, and in 2020, it's been debated how important those institutions are. Now that we're in such a diverse society, and now that everyone pretty much has access to, in theory, if you want to go to the University of North Carolina, if you want to go to Harvard, if you want to go to Stanford or or MIT, you can do that. But I think my experience was that those are still important institutions for, in my instance, salvaging my education. Because I want to tell everyone here knows me as Dr. Dunbar, and I appreciate the respect I get here. But from K through 12, I wasn't a good student, and I wasn't an A student from K through 12, and it took me until getting to college to figure out how to be a student and how to achieve in that regard. But I think in that regard, HBCUs are important, and as you said, recruiters are going there looking for talent,
Right.
and the professors there, at least the ones at my institution, they really cared about the students. So we got a lot of mentoring in terms of our lives, in terms of our career paths.
Great to hear that. And I wanted to, you just touched on a concept that I wanted to really back you up on. There's a thing, the good thing about many of the HBCUs, and let me try to qualify this. Since a large number of Black students are first generation college students, and they more than likely, or I would say we more than likely have come from lower middle class, working class, blue collar backgrounds, then those variables have an impact. So there's a concept called the college mismatch. So say for instance you come from a single family parent who's hardworking mom or hardworking father, and they give you what you need, but they haven't prepared you to go necessarily to Berkeley. However, if you go to Morehouse College and really get grounded, you may come out of Morehouse College with a physics degree and you can get a PhD from the University of California at Berkeley. Because Morehouse College understands who you are. They've helped people get there before. So a lot of the deficits that you would come in to college with coming from a lower socioeconomic standing, not just because you were born into that situation, then you go to a place like Morehouse, you go to a place like Tuskegee, you go to a place like Prairie View A&M, you go to a place like Alabama A&M, you go to a place like Southern University, just Florida A&M. You go to a lot of these places and you get your grounding when basically you were not supposed to even get through college. You know what I mean? When they come out of some of these schools, and the schools could do a better job, but when a lot of these kids come out of these schools and they come from these, for lack of a better word, broken families, the best place that they can go and get grounded would be an HBCU if they're going to take it seriously. Because there's no sense in, well, let me say it different. It may not be an advantage to go to a really big school like Virginia Tech or Michigan State if you don't have that foundation to compete at that level. You have that basic raw material, but those schools are big and those classes are big and they teach very rapidly. It's not they're not going to go over things that they feel you should have learned this in high school. You didn't learn it. Too bad. Look to your left, look to your right. Two of you are not going to make it. But at a typical good HBCU like Xavier University of Louisiana, they said, look to your left, look to your right. We're going to try to help all of you make it if you do the work. So it doesn't surprise me that Xavier University of Louisiana is the most successful school in the U.S., PWI or HBCU, in producing Black physicians and dentists. They just knock everybody out of the water. And so those are some of the things that kids need to be, and that come from having parents who are aware. Your kid may get a scholarship to a big school, a partial scholarship, and those schools know that they're not going to put in the support systems for them to get through that school. And that's something that we have to address on that. Were you going to make an additional comment on that?
I will say this. I will say that I don't know, based upon the student that I was coming out of high school, I don't know that I would have been ready for the University of Michigan as an undergraduate, because I was still figuring out how to be a student and a successful student. And I think the mentoring at my HBCU was very critical for me making that jump, and also shining in a way. I tell the story. I think I told this story on this channel. I remember my auntie Adele, asked me when I was finishing up at my HBCU. She said, "Honey, she said, what are you going to do with a degree from Johnson C. Smith University?" And so what she was saying was, "Who's heard of that out in Seattle? Who's heard of that down in Los Angeles? What are you going to do outside of the Southeast?" And that was one of my motivations for going to the University of Michigan. But I think, again, those are important institutions now, definitely for students who haven't figured it out yet and who are willing to learn. And I'm going to say something controversial.
Okay.
The listeners you can read into this however you want to, but pay attention. With that being said, me stating that those institutions are still important, pay attention to who's doing things to keep those institutions open, and who is enacting legislation and policies to make it harder for those institutions to stay open. And also, for alumni of your HBCUs, knowing how important those are and what they did for you, try to give something back. I sit on the executive board of our Washington, D.C. alumni chapter. And so I hear stories about how little our alumni give. And I suspect, it's my suspicion, I haven't seen any data on it, knowing what a net worth is, knowing about the law of compounding interest, knowing how to budget, knowing what an asset and a liability is. I think all of that plays a role into why HBCU alums don't give back to their alma maters, because of the level of financial literacy. That's my hypothesis. The level of financial literacy is low. And I don't think there's an understanding that higher education is a business. Mm-hmm. It's not just you go to the institution and then you get your degree and you leave. Once you make it, I think you have a little bit of a responsibility to help those coming after you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox like that, but again, I sit on the executive board of our local chapter here in DC, and so I hear about this. And it's one thing to protest, it's one thing to vote, but what are you doing at the grassroots level to help the generations coming after you? So.
Okay, thank you on that. Okay, thanks, Chaos, on that. I'll look to see on that. I did see, give me just a second on that. Let me check one more thing. Now, I did want to talk about a mentee. Let me just check one thing. Because I have mentored individuals. And what's happening on that is that a lot of times when you mentor someone, I had a mentee a few years back who got a partial scholarship to a very nice school. He got a $5,000 a year scholarship to Southern Methodist University, which is a beautiful campus and everything. Mm-hmm. However, it cost $25,000 a year to go there. Mm-hmm. So what happened is that he went to a summer program, a STEM program at Langston University, and he got offered a full scholarship at Langston after he completed it. And so he got to go to college debt-free, get a chemistry degree with highest honors. Then he got a Navy fellowship, the health profession scholarship, to go to Meharry Medical School. So he was able to go to undergrad and medical school debt-free. But had he gone to the other school where he would have had to borrow, as well as I don't know that based on his background, although a very determined student, that might not have been the stepping stone for him to go to med school. Because the history of it is that most of the students, Black background, who are African American, they don't particularly get those types of opportunities. They're not, a lot of times they wash out in the first 2 years. So going to a place, like you said, where you can get grounded, where you can realize who you are, because those first 2 years are very, very important. And he also got to pledge Alpha Phi Alpha, which he had not thought he would. So he's an Alpha man now. He is a lieutenant commander in the Navy Medical Corps. And, he's doing pretty well for himself. And he got to go to college and medical school debt free. So these are some of the things that we're working on getting together.
Okay. We are just over an hour. I want to. I think it's something. I think we should mention this, or at least give some clues to this, since this is entitled the connection between education, entrepreneurship, and business. Are you still there? Right? Are you still there, Ray?
I'm still there. You went silent just briefly on that. Can you hear me okay now?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Right,
okay, so in terms of, you get your white collar career, you get that going, and you have your business idea. You mentioned Shark Tank earlier in our discussion. One of the things I noticed about Shark Tank. Are you still there, Ray?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. There's a rustling, and your green screen went away a little bit.
Okay, so. I'm moving. I was moving around. let me stop moving. I was moving around a second. Okay, am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of my most vivid memories growing up is I remember my mother. My mother dibbled and dabbled in business a little bit herself, and I remember her complaining that banks wouldn't loan to Black people. And one of the things I noticed about Shark Tank, and I'm sure everyone who's watching it noticed, is that when those people go in front of the sharks, their idea already has to be up and running. And before the sharks are willing to put their money into the idea, they want to see that the people are already up and running, and they can talk about their sales, and they can talk about what they've done to get their idea off the ground themselves. Because as the angel investor, part of the game is making sure you don't lose your money, in someone else's idea. So when I started my LLC and I applied for my business credit, one of the things that it was very scary, to have to answer those questions, because I had only been up and running for a little while. But the bank wanted to know, okay, well, you're asking us to extend you this credit. How's your operation done in the last year, and what do you expect to do for the next year? So I'm saying that to say that if you're going to go get funding or ask for funding, they're going to want to see that you're already up and running, and they want to see that your operation or your idea or your concept is doing what you say it can do. So part of that is just getting your personal finances in order, because you are a business yourself. And a lot of people don't understand that. So did you want to say anything about that?
Well, that's a part of being a part of a successful company already, getting your preparation, going over those things that you're doing for someone else while you're trying to learn the business. As you do those things, education, networking, people who know how to do those things. What's happened, we are rugged individualists, but we have to also look at the ecosystems that we've come out of. A lot of times we haven't come out of the type of social ecology system where we understand the importance of, like you said, network. We haven't even heard about it. We're working to make a living, which our parents are trying to make it the best they can. So when we get to these higher level concepts or these things that people are looking for, then that's different. And that's why college is not, is more than just a degree. It is that social network that you're getting into. If you're going to go and acclimate to that. So some people, I think, even when they go to college, they hold on to some things that keep them from moving forward. So if you're going to go to a big school or a good school and you're still going to hold on to the values that keep people poor, then in some ways, in my view, you may be defeating the purpose of getting a higher education. How do you feel about that concept?
Yes, I agree. There are instances where the things you're learning and the things you're going to need to do and evolutions you're going to have to make are going to force you to have to leave some of what you learned from your home ecosystem behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly in our community, we struggle a little bit with that because you get accused of, acting like you're better. You can get accused of forgetting where you come from. And in some instances, when you're trying to start your own business or your own operation, you might have to tighten up your budget a little bit. And so you can't be giving money away for, any old drama that's happening in your family. I mean, obviously you want to help if you can, but to get yourself to that next level, you might have to tell some people, no, I can't help you with that. I can't do that right now. So you might have to learn to speak a different way. You might have to learn to move a certain way. You might have to stop hanging out at the same, in certain places. You might have to find a new circle.
Very important. Would you go into that a little bit further, Dr. Dunbar? Because what's happening, this has been written about, people, the keep it real thing, I'm going to college, but, I'm still keeping it real, hanging out with the same boys I did when I was in high school, etc. And discuss the importance of growth with that, because sometimes when you move on, you actually have to move on and act. This is going to sound hard, but you are actually becoming upper middle class, and maybe people don't know it, because once you got your PhD from the University of Michigan, financially you're earning in the upper middle class. Educationally, you are in the upper middle class, and probably most of your circle eventually will become upper middle class. That doesn't mean you don't love other people, that you don't interact with them, but if you're growing, you're going to be around people in your class or ecosystem. Could you kind of discuss that as well?
Yeah, you know what? And this, you just gave me the opportunity to show another one of my writings here. This one, this is called The Story of How I Earned My STEM Degree. I wrote this a couple of years ago, and I'm going to, over on my science channel, I'm going to talk about this particular story. But at the bottom of the story, after I go through all of the things that I had to learn inside the lab, I said a few words about some of the hard lessons I had to learn outside the lab. So there was one night, I see Wayman Brown in the chat there. He's from Buffalo as well. What's up, Wayman? One night when I was working on my thesis, I was back in Buffalo over the holiday season, and me and another buddy, we went to a nightclub, and I didn't see any of what was happening, but my buddy was trying to talk to this woman, and I guess her boyfriend was there, and he saw my buddy flirting with his girl or doing whatever, and I didn't see the whole thing. And when we were leaving the establishment, and when I realized that there was some pending violence, I told my buddy, "Hey man, let's just get out of here." And he was like, "No, walk slow, walk slow." He was ready to do something, and I realized, you know what? I can't afford to show up at my research lab with a black eye and with teeth missing and with unable to do my task. It would look really, really bad if I showed up like that, especially also if I have to give a presentation. When the further you move up, you can't afford to get involved in those kinds of things. So I think that's an example of that. Right now I work in the government, and a lot of that involves speaking, sitting in meetings, giving feedback. You can't afford to go in there, beaten up and having gone through all kinds of things. So that's what I would say. I would say to that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you put that out because
The other thing,
go for it.
Ray, is that if you're talking about collaborating with someone on a business venture, yes, they're going to be looking at how you run your life. Is your life stable, or is there an element of chaos to your life? Because they're going to need to depend on you.
Mhm.
And if your life is unstable, and if you're managing your money all kinds of way, they're not going to want to partner with you. And I wouldn't want to partner with someone like that.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, especially like when you're in school and out of school as well. A lot of times we mentor these kids to a lot of times if they're if they come back to a very harsh neighborhood, sometimes in the holiday trips, we'll either invite them to come stay with us or one of the mentors and their families, because you don't want some kid that's at West Point or they could be at North Carolina A&T and their ROTC Pro. You don't want them coming home to some harsh neighborhood and someone just has an attitude that and we know life is hard. So I'm not saying that. And just happen to kill a kid because they were having a bad day or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time or some stuff is going down. So you're very correct on that. And it's some harsh talking, but we have to at some point discuss that because we need their brain power. We already don't have enough people in STEM as it is. We already, you know what I mean? We don't have enough black men in the colleges as it is. So for them to go to a friendly party and do the normal things that teenage kids do, say hello to some girl and then end up dead behind it, and that's real. That's very real. And then the person that killed them has to be locked up for the rest of their life. We don't want either of those things to happen. So commenting on that is very important. And that's why having competent mentors is very important to kind of not just to tell you the academic side, but to kind of ask about, hey, how's family life? Because a lot of these kids, they're going to school, not only just the first one in their family, they're somewhat isolated. They're somewhat rather isolated. There's nothing wrong with being considered a nerd, but you're coming out here and you are sitting here, you're getting a computer science degree when nobody in your family has went to college. You know what I mean? And so these kids are by themselves. Sometimes they are socially awkward, but they are preparing themselves for a very good future. So we have to give them good advice so they'll do the right thing. And so that was really good that you got out of there. And that's probably why a lot of people go home less than you think. I mean, sometimes they'll go home for Thanksgiving, do those 3 days, and fly out. And they won't go to any events. They won't go to the nightclub with Joey and them or Eddie and them. They'll go do what they got to do, hang out with their family. And even some people, are moving their families out of that. Or, when their parents retire, they say, come on down here with us and we'll get your house or you can get a house next door or something. We can do something, but you're not going to be staying up there where you don't have people close around. So, yeah, those are things and that's good mentoring. I'm glad that you made that decision, Dr. Dunbar, because we have you here now. We don't know what would have went down, man, because when stuff goes down, it goes down so fast, man, that we don't know what could have happened.
Yes, and you also have to, be mindful of who you, get yourself intimately involved with, in that story. And I won't harp on this, but, if in this instance, if the woman you're talking to, if she's got a lot of baggage that can spill over into whatever it is you're doing. So sometimes you don't know that, she's still talking to her ex or something like that. And before you know it, you have a situation on your hands. So there are a lot of things you have to look out for and be careful of. So Ray, we're at an hour and 20 minutes. I see a few business-minded guys in the chat. I mean, we can go for just a little bit longer. I want you to get all the points out that you wanted to get out. Is there anything we missed?
I think that we went over, let me just look at the last part. I think we went over most of the things, and I'm glad that we did do a little bit of heads up before. When we're saying this, as you said, we're not trying to separate or make anybody feel badly. We want to encourage these people to give them the foundation for success. We want to give them all the tools that they need to be successful. And, you know, when we come from working class backgrounds, I'm trying to figure out how a college degree, because we are who we are, you know what I mean? And we're acclimating to these environments as best that we can. But we still came up from the neighborhoods that we came from. So that we're called bougie or whatever, it is what it is. But we have to give all, like you said, what we're trying to do is give them tools so that they can succeed in life because the competition is fierce. Things are moving pretty fast. And those were the major points. I think we went over the importance of education as a good stepping stone to entrepreneurship and wealth development. Now, you did hit on a point, and hopefully we'll have another discussion on that because I did do an article. I'll send it to you. I don't know if I have on why smart men marry smart women or moving towards the intellectual man. So I think that might be something that we'll be able to discuss too, because that's very important that the woman in your life is an asset to you and that she enhances your life. But because another thing, as you said, Dr. Dunbar, there are a lot of guys getting killed because they didn't even know that the woman that they met. So this random meeting people had a guy, and some of these guys, especially if you're more successful, if a young lady has been dating somebody who's not right for her, and she's trying to get her life together, and she comes across you, you happen to have a PhD and a very good job, and the other person maybe doesn't have that or has been financially marginal, they'll take that out on you because that might have been all he had is that pretty little thing. And she's trying to do better. I wouldn't say at your expense. She's trying to come up. He's angry. So as an intelligent, accomplished black man, you have to be very, very careful and very, very particular about the type of woman that you invite into your life. And we can discuss that in a different thing, but that's very important because you read about this all the time. Somebody's ex-boyfriend killed that guy because that guy was a better version and was going to give that wife, that girlfriend and child a better life. So that's something that we'll have to discuss maybe at another podcast.
That would make for a very, very exciting discussion. Everyone, I dropped the link in the chat if anyone wants to come up and say a few words with the time we have left. My father, and I shot a video on this. My father, when I became Dr. Dunbar, quote unquote, my father didn't want me to introduce myself in that way. And one of the things he told me, because I went and did my postdoctoral fellowship out where he lives, so I got to stay with him for about 2.5 years before I came here to the DMV. But one of the things he told me when I moved to the Albany area was one of the reasons why you shouldn't introduce yourself as Dr. Dunbar. He said some guys are going to want to fight you.
Wow.
Because some guys are going to be jealous, and among other things. My dad can be a bit of a conspiracy theorist and a pessimist, but one of the things he said was some of the guys will want to fight you because of that title you hold. And so for a while, I didn't do that, and I had to learn how to embrace my title and my accomplishment in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't walk around acting like I'm better than anyone or that I have a God complex. But I think that kind of dovetails into what you just said. Those kinds of things can happen in this context of male-female relationships. Guys, the StreamYard link is there if you want to come up and say a few words. I'm gonna close us out formally for this part of the discussion with this. This is another my blogging platform. I think this fits with what we're talking about, and this takes us back to Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Claude Anderson. I wrote this earlier this year. This is entitled Dr. Martin Luther King's Final Vision and Dr. Claude Anderson's Prophecies. And one of Dr. Claude Anderson's Well, apparently, before Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, he felt like he'd been going in the wrong way, and that he needed to refocus his efforts on economic empowerment and those kinds of things. So, in other words, it's not just having civil rights, but can you have the civil rights without the economics? And Dr. Claude Anderson, and I think it's a shame that for most of my life, I don't know, I didn't hear a lot about Dr. Claude Anderson growing up in Buffalo. But for a lot of us think we just had the election. A lot of us just think about voting. I voted. Get out to vote. Rock the vote. Vote your booty to the poll. Well, how much good is that without economics? And so I wrote this discussing Dr. King's final vision, because we don't think about this. We just think about the civil rights. We just think that if we go out to the polls and vote, then we'll get the changes and the policies that we want. And we're about to see whether or not we will. But he talked about the reason all of this matters is his 4 floors. I think it's either 4 floors or 5 floors. I'm going to read these off. The first floor is building a community and practicing group economics, making the money bounce in the community 8 to 12 times before it leaves. The second floor is politics. I'll say that again. The second floor is politics. And so without economics, there's no ability to influence the politicians or elections as a group. According to Dr. Anderson, voting is immaterial and a game of entertainment. You buy or rent the politicians. The third floor is using the politicians to influence the court systems and law enforcement to decrease things like police brutality. The fourth floor is media. If you don't own media, you can't organize, communicate, or motivate. And then surprisingly, the fifth floor, and this means we're putting this one first, and it's important. We're thinking critically here. We're just thinking. According to Dr. Anderson, the fifth floor is education. And so educating the people to work in the structures that you build. So I'm going to leave this in the chat as well. So again, if anyone wants to come into the stream, I'll hang on for a few more minutes. But if not, I think we've gotten a lot done here today. Do you want to say anything about what I just showed, Ray?
I think it's that I see where he's coming from on that. In a community that because the education would reinforce everything if all of those first, second, and third and fourth floors had been built. What's happened is that it looks like those other floors have not been built, and education is very important. However, we'll have to find out what we'll need to do to make those things come together.
Okay, Alonzo is up. Again, anyone who's new to the channel, please subscribe. If you want to make a donation, I'll put my Cash App in right now. Alonzo, thanks for coming up. Well, what say you?
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on the panel. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, especially that we hear a lot in Black America, is entrepreneurship. And you spoke to something that speaks to me directly. So in terms of entrepreneurship and self-employment, I think what's hit our community heavy is a lot of self-employment, and we confuse that with entrepreneurship. For example, I am self-employed. I am not an entrepreneur in the field that I work in. I have a lot of friends who are self-employed, and they get this entitlement issue. Well, I'm a business owner. Yes, you're a 1099 self-employed individual, Schedule C, but you're not exactly a business owner. You're self-employed. And I think we need to kind of, if you could speak to either one of you gentlemen, learning the difference and understanding the difference, because I think in our community, we don't quite understand the difference between the two.
Do you want to take that over, Dr. Dunbar?
Yeah, I'm pulling up a visual to show that right now. Okay, so everyone, this is a really good book to read, to talk about to learn about what Alonzo just mentioned. So this is, and there are numerous schools of thought on this, but if you're unfamiliar with it, this is a good starting place. It's a very, you should read the first book, but if you haven't read the first book, you can read Cash Flow Quadrant and kind of get an idea of what the original Rich Dad Poor Dad book was about. So according to this paradigm, in our economy, there are employees and there are self-employed individuals, which Alonzo just discussed, and there are business owners and there are investors. And so in this paradigm, the tax laws are different for people who are over on the left side, the employee and the self-employed person. And then the tax laws are different for individuals over on the right side, which is the business owner and the investor. And the way they make their money is different. As the employee, you're going to work for someone else. As a self-employed person, you pretty much own a job. And the business owner and the investor, they pretty much, they own systems. Okay, they have systems running under them, and they're making the money in a different way. But I think that kind of gets to what you were talking about, Alonzo, right? I mean, you're talking about owning a job versus owning a set of systems.
Absolutely. And what I see often is technically people own a set of systems, like a lot of like MLM programs where you can get wealthy, but they are a system, but technically you're just owning that job and you're promoting basically someone else's system to grow. Whereas, for example, myself, I'm in the financial world, insurance and real estate, and gentlemen like you are people I want to speak to because I do have future plans of managing a black hedge fund. So I'll just put that out there now. But I'm in my 30s, and Wall Street considers me to still be wet behind the ears in terms of hedge funds. So I'll probably likely be closer to my 50s when the hedge fund finally comes to fruition.
Okay, and so based upon what Alonzo just said, and I said earlier in this stream, I was able to monetize my blogging platform. Right now, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about how to get onto the other side because, there are numerous ways to make money with a blog or in the area of search engine optimization. But the way my operation is running right now, just briefly, I get paid when I post articles. I'm working with a collaborator, but that I have to do that in order for me to get paid. So I'm thinking about right now, how do I set things up so that things are running on cruise control? And so I'm getting paid in other ways and in multiple ways. Real estate, being a landlord is one way. In theory, you own the building, you move the renters in, and assuming you buy that building at a favorable sale price, you'll cash flow every month off the rent. In theory, you're making money in your sleep, but that's a different thing from having to physically do something every single day and every single hour to generate your profit. I mean, you want to generate profit, and if you are, that's good, but ideally you want to put it in cruise control, quote unquote.
Sounds very good. And also, a lot of people do both, as far as a lot of people keep their careers and also have actual businesses separate from their careers. Another thing that I would want to discuss, and then maybe in a different podcast to consider, is that when people team up with a life partner, when they get married or however they decide to do it, that's one way to develop a business that would benefit both of you. Like one person is that stable financial arm that pays the bills, and then the other person might be the realtor or the other person that gets the homes rebuilt or remodeled and sold, and then the profits from that go into investment. So those are some things that we would have to consider as well, because that's another leg of financial independence that we, many of our brothers and sisters may be working one-handed way. When you have a partner that's 100% invested with you, and they're your life partner and spouse, then you have another person who's there working with you to build a good life. And as you're doing your thing, you're that stable financial arm, and then you can kind of speculate a little bit more. Then you have a person that can go out there and look at those homes and find out how are the contractors, and then once everything is done, you have a sum of money that you invest in other areas or other properties. How do you feel about that concept as well?
I think that's a beautiful concept. That's one of the concepts, as I was saying, in terms of owning your job. So I have my real estate license in the state of New York. I have my life, health, and accidental insurance license in 5 states. I also possess my P10, or my tax preparer's identification number. All self-employment, but to Black men, I try to go to areas that where a lot of other Black men are quote unquote self-employed, which is generally your local street pharmacist. And I explain to them that besides being that local street pharmacist, you can own your job and do things like I do, where I don't have someone dictating to me, get up at this time, go to sleep at that time. But even having that life partner, my wife, is actually the stable income in our situation because I work off of solely commission. Some months I have a better month. Other months I have a 0 month. Some months I make more in one sale than, she makes in 2 months. And, as I'm building, we're starting to get towards that stability that we're looking for. I would say I'm building it as I fly. But I think that's a great concept. And I think one of the things that African-American men can benefit from is something like affirmative action, where a lot of African-American women are being placed in corporate positions that are stable. And the men are left to hunt, gather, or fend for ourselves, whether that is your, local t-shirt business, your local rapper, whatever. But now we do need to value and their positions and say, hey, I'm glad that you're able to hold that position. Since society has it set up that way, let's use the system that's sent against us for us by partnering with you and realizing, yes, you have a PhD, young lady, and you have a great 6-figure salary job that most Black men are cut off from, even from like school. If we look at, Black male studies with things like Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. So the idea is, let's go ahead and be industrious, like myself and my wife. She has a government job. She's stable. I don't even have a college degree. I dropped out of college. So my abilities are limited in terms of job prospects, but I go out there self-employed, create my own, and we balance it together.
Great to hear that. Can I add? I'm kind of curious. In what you're doing, you're seeing that street pharmacists would be a market for your products.
So, as opposed to being a street pharmacist,
Okay.
instead of being a street pharmacist, be an insurance agent. Go pay the fee to get the schooling. Now that you have the schooling, you have this license. The beauty of me having my insurance license, I was licensed in the state of New York. We then moved here to the state of Connecticut. I happen to be able to now, without issue, walk into a job selling insurance here in the state of Connecticut. Why? Because I just transferred my license over. I paid the fee to have my license available here in the state of Connecticut. So immediately, my wife may have moved and have to find another job prospect. But immediately, I can come out here and hit the ground running as an independent agent and sell life insurance or roll somebody's 401k over. Ironically enough, I just did that last week. Roll somebody's 401k over because I just met them at the bank. And they asked the bank teller, hey, I want to roll over a 401k. I hand her my card, said, hey, I can do that for you privately. It's actually more secure than the bank. And just rolled over 90 grand. But I was able to do that because I'm able to take that risk. For example, the street pharmacist, every time here in Brooklyn, I go to the corner store to go buy a soda or a beef patty or a pack of gum. There's generally 3 to 5 young Black men. And I look young. I don't look like I'm in my late 30s. So they think I'm around their age in their 20s. The first words that come out of their mouth, yo, I got that bud for you. I've got that weed, son. So if they're willing enough to advertise their illegal product, they can be willing enough to stand there and ask 100 people a day, hey, you want to buy life insurance? Nope. Okay, next. Hey, you want to buy a house? Nope. Okay, next. One person will bite.
Okay, that's an interesting concept, Alonzo. I'm not certain how many people. I mean, this is where we were discussing a little bit earlier about background and life choices. Um, if they used to be streetcar corner pharmacists, I don't know how many. There might be a lot of people who might be open. Yeah, they might want to purchase their insurance or financial products from a former street corner pharmacist. Is that how does that? I mean, I'm not certain, but if that's an option, because it seems. Well, how do you feel about that, Dr. Dunbar? I don't know how to look at that. I'll have to just think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on the same boat. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'll give you guys an example. Let's look at the Tulsa Real Estate Fund. Are either one of you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at the organizer, the manager of the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, Jay Morrison. Prior to getting with Sotheby's Real Estate, he was a cocaine salesman and did many years, at least I believe almost like 10 years in prison for being a pretty successful cocaine salesman, and realized one day while in prison, got shown a real estate magazine and was like, wait, I can make like 4 bricks of cocaine off of one real estate transaction? What the hell? Now Jay Morrison has the Tulsa Real Estate Fund and, Jay Morrison Academy. He's worth $10 million. So the idea of you're not going to be presenting yourself as that street pharmacist, number one. Number two, it will actually penetrate an underserved community. Recently, August 4th, 2020, I was at the Conference of African American Financial Professionals, which was hosted by the American College of Financial Services, which is also the CEO currently is a Black man. But one of the things that is mentioned in the Conference of African American Financial Professionals is that in my industry, only 5% of the licensed individuals in that industry are African American. So it's an underserved market. I am trying to right now qualify for an elite level of insurance producers and financial advisors, which is the MDRT, $1 Million Round Table. I'm close to qualifying for that this year. I'm about $10,000 of submitted premium, which is about 10 to 20 good life insurance policies sold, or one good AUM client, assets under management. But in terms of that, again, I wouldn't be presenting in that manner, but I'd also be able to penetrate the market. There's actually an article that explains that 91% of African Americans, 89% of African Americans believe in life insurance versus 63% of all other adults in America. This is an article that was published, I believe, November 19th, 2020. In that article, the issue is there is another financial advisor, I think her name is Jocelyn Paul from Prudential. And the difficulty she was saying is that African Americans aren't presented the insurance and financial services products like others are. Prime example, part of the reason that I sell life insurance is that in 2008, 3 days before Mother's Day, my mother got to witness me being shot 5 times in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. These are instances where a lot of dudes that I know, young Black men, who, just like me, we look at someone like Dr. Dunbar, who's in a suit and tie in his 40s. And when I'm in my 20s, I look at you and I say, oh man, you're boring. I look at Future and I say, well, Future's got the same money. And Dr. Dunbar, it took you so much time and effort and energy to get to this aspect, whereas we're taught to get the fast dollar. So I'm thinking of it like, well, hey, Dr. Dunbar, I know you might own real estate and be secure for 20 years down the line, and I was having this conversation last night, especially due to the 80s, The women want the guy who can buy her an Hermes bag, that Birkin bag. Now, you're more fiscally responsible. You likely can buy her a Birkin bag. You have a PhD. Will you buy her a Birkin bag? Maybe, maybe not. But the dude who is running the street selling cocaine gets this money fast and buys her a Mercedes Benz, even though it's 10 years old. We just see the Mercedes Benz logo. We don't understand that is a Yugo, but it has a Benz logo, and that people who buy Benzes are buying Benzes because they're saying, I have the money to have a car that breaks down a lot. So I'm sorry to go all over the place with this, but basically, you know, it's a market that's not penetrated, so we can relate to the Black American probably a lot easier, because when I tell brothers, look, I got shot 5 times, they're more apt to listen to me about life insurance than when I come to them with a suit and tie.
Well, I mean, if that's going to be your niche market on that, or your niche market on that, then that would be something that you would have the skills to do. I am concerned about young gentlemen who do illegal activities and bar themselves from getting licensed. I think that once you have a felony, you usually cannot get licensed to sell financial products. Is that correct? Okay. So if they're doing illegal activity and they happen to get locked up, they usually probably won't get a felony, and they're not going to be able to find that. But if there's a niche market where you can approach people and hopefully to turn them around, because I do know in some states in insurance, if a person gets killed in the commission of a felony, they will not pay that insurance policy.
That's all states.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so those are a few areas of concern on that. But but it seems like you understand the market that you're working toward, and you have an entryway into that for a certain sector of that market, and hopefully those young men, once they hear what you have to offer, they also will turn their lives around into some productive activities where they won't end up, doing illegal activities to make a living.
Understood.
Okay, gentlemen, we are coming up on 2 hours. We got 13 minutes left until it's 2 hours. I think this is a good place to wind things down. Alonzo, I thank you for coming up. Do you want to say any last words before we close in on the end?
Yeah, I guess. Thank you again, Dr. Dunbar, for allowing me to come up and speak on your platform. Thank you, Ray. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being examples of Black men that we can strive to be, that younger Black men can strive to be, because I think one of the main issues is we, as a culture, tend to not praise gentlemen such as yourselves who are established and esteemed. I would also like to, getting back to the topic, speak about education. And there's nothing wrong with self-employment or entrepreneurship, but the ultimate goal is to have a business and be an investor and get onto the right side as a whole, so that we can have that ultimate time freedom to do the things that we enjoy, and to spend the time that we have with our families. Once again, thank you, and positivity to all.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alonzo. I want to read this comment really quickly from Sandata Mawabu. I'm seeing pink and green, so I'm assuming it's a she. So she says, a felony stops you from doing many government jobs and getting clearances. Yep, that's another good reason why you have to watch your dealings and your reputation. That will absolutely, because the government I'm in right now, they do a background check before they determine whether or not they can hire you.
And that's a lot of the financial services companies as well do background checks, and there's a yearly there's a yearly check on certain financial service providers as well. That if you could have, even if there's been a trust issue or a felony committed, then if that's happened, that has to be reported, and you could lose your position and lose your license on that. So it's pretty much steered clear of those type of activities.
One further, just to, especially since we're in a space for men, in terms of financial services, I don't know if it is in the government. I have family who's at a GS-14 level. But in terms of financial services, you and real estate, you will lose your license or be barred from being able to get licensed or your position if you owe back child support.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't be a fiduciary and not pay your child support.
Not pay your child support. Yep.
That's very important. Yeah.
Okay, Ray, do you want to have you have any parting words?
Yeah, I do thank you for allowing me to present that information. I do want to say I'm very proud of you for sticking it out at the University of Michigan and knocking that out and being a good representation of an HBCU. And hopefully this will be an opportunity for us to have some additional discussions on that. Now, you don't have your, what do you call it, your super chat up. So once you get that, I'd like to contribute to that way as well, if you decide to get that up.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to reach 1,000 to feature, but you can make a donation to my Cash App if you want to.
Okay.
I'll leave that in the chat right now. Just give me 1 second here. I don't know if you're familiar with Cash App.
So the way I'll try to see if I can use it that way, but I may be able to do it in a roundabout way to get it to you.
All right. And my PayPal is below the video.
Okay. And that was basically, I appreciate you for going over this information. I think it's really good. I do think your blog, I've got an opportunity to look at that as well. And I'm going over a lot of your videos and learning more and more. And I appreciate you for doing that, man. It's Dr. Dunbar, it's really a good thing that you've done. And keep up the good work.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to write anything myself over there lately because, I'm getting content from my client, and I'm, doing the YouTube, and I'm trying to finish this book, and just my hands are going in all different directions, but I appreciate that. And I appreciate you approaching me for this topic. I wasn't sure where we were going to go with this, and I wasn't sure how this was going to go, but I appreciate you approaching me on this. And I think these are important discussions that, especially in our community, that we need to have. I think they say that the United States educational system in general just doesn't teach anything on financial literacy. So I think it's important that we had this discussion. I'm going to take us out with a couple of things. And I think a follow-up, Ray, you discussed this, is we need to talk about the pairing off piece, marriage and finding a significant other, a spouse, what have you. And going back to the whole theme of reading for reading's sake, once you finish your college degree, and again, that's not the only way to become an entrepreneur, and that's not the only way to have a prosperous, good life. But if you go that route, your education should not stop after you're handed your diploma, because there's so much more to learn than your field of study. I would recommend the Millionaire Next Door series as well. I own a couple of these books, and going back to what Ray said about reading for reading's sake, there's a lot of valuable game in the Millionaire Next Door series, not just about, there's a lot of game in here about the characteristics of self-made millionaires, and a key piece is that they marry, which is interesting because we're in an era now where people are struggling with that, especially in our community. But the last book in this series I read was Stop Acting Rich and Start Thinking Like a Real Millionaire. And I'll probably shoot a video on that, but there's a specific passage where he talks about how millionaires decided to marry and what characteristics they picked in their spouses. And I tell you what, that passage was much more valuable than a lot of what I received in my family throughout my lifetime. I hope no one from my family is listening to this, but yeah, there was a lot of valuable game in that one little passage. So again, this is going to be part of my mantra from this point forward. Reading for reading's sake. Your education should not stop once you are handed your diploma. So, I suspect this will be, Ray, I suspect this will be the first of many discussions that we have as money and financial literacy are things that are near and dear to my heart. I see Black Man Being Brutally Honest is here. He said, get the likes up. We're at the end, so if you're watching this on the playback, please like, please share, and please subscribe. Right now, I'm sitting at 685 subscribers, so I need 15 more to get to 700. So with that, please let us know if you have any questions or comments in the comments section below this video. This is going to go to YouTube for a replay. If you want to donate to the channel, my Cash App and my PayPal are below this playback. This was a lot of fun. Please enjoy and be safe. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and have a good week. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye. Take it easy, Ray.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dunbar. Take care.